Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Town of Monroe ZBA meeting for the night of February 22nd, 2022. Just some housekeeping matters. Emergency exits are behind you to your left and to the right where you entered the building. We do have a number of items on the agenda tonight, so we're going to have to be patient to get to the end. And with that, I'd like to open the meeting by roll call first.
Michael Murphy,
Present.
Kevin Scully,
Here.
Marcy Daniels is absent, Chip Castiglione,
Here.
Stephen Tao,
Here.
and John Seely.
Here.
Thank you, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to open the meeting with
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So with that, I'd like to take the liberty to switch around our agenda. We only have one new project tonight, and I'd like to start with that one new project before we launch off into the list of public hearings that we have open. So starting with the James Flood application for 206 Sunset Terrace. Mr. Flood, if you can come up and address the.
Right up there.
Okay, Mr. Flood, you have an application before the town building department to put an extension on an existing house on Sunset Terrace.
Correct.
And with that, the building department directed you here because you have 3 variances you need to build the extension and the configuration you have proposed.
Yes, we conform to
Okay. So I have up on the screen here, see from where you're sitting, but I just want to, go over the particulars of, what we're looking at here. The orange box represents the existing lot,
Yes, correct.
and then the yellow attached to that, that is the addition.
Yes,
And then the small blue box beneath that addition, that's a open deck.
correct.
Okay. And there's no intent to put a roof on that yet,
No.
because that changes your setback.
And it's nice to,
Okay, so. Excuse me while I look for some information.
So the variances that is gonna be seeking are the side setback, the rear setback, and the increase in developed area? Is that what I was reading?
Yes, that's correct. And this lot also comes with 4 other non-conforming conditions on the lot that he can't change. You know, minimum lot area. This is in a SR 15, and so the 15,000 square foot required. They only have 8,367. Minimum lot width required is 85, and they have 8. They can't change that. Minimum front yard is 40. They have 19.7, and that's been that way. They're not looking to make it any worse under this application. Actually, the extension runs more to the rear, and the minimum side yards required is 15, and what's provided is 6.4, and that's an existing condition.
That's on the dwelling.
Right. Right. So then what he's looking for, in addition to that, is on the a reduction in total side yards required is 40 feet, and what they're going to provide is 32, which is a 20% reduction from the requirement. And a reduction on the rear yard setback required is 40 feet. They're going to provide again 32, which again is a 20% reduction. And the one that kind of tips the scales a little bit is the increase in developed area on the site. Maximum allowed is 25%. What's provided is 37%. So that's a 48% increase above what's allowed. So one of the questions I have is there any way you could reduce that coverage?
You can, if you're willing to eliminate the garage, that'll give me a significant amount of, I don't know the exact square footage right there, like eliminate the garage.
You know, we also don't want to change the program of the house that you have. Right? I mean, you already, if you did the building part, you already have house plans brought up with the garage.
Correct, yes.
Like you said, the existing house is really tucked into the corner of that lot, and all the proposed additions are going more towards the center of the lot. Kind of balancing it out, right?
Yeah, I'm starting the addition 15 feet from the neighbor's house on the right-hand side, and bringing it out. So,
Right. So you're doing the best you can with, you know, honoring the setbacks to the degree possible. And the fact that it's a small lot is what adds to the problem of the excessive lot coverage. Let's see. And is that a photo?
correct, yes, yes.
That's it. Yeah, so your current lot coverage with just this house and the small sidewalk around it is at 25%. So you're pretty much already there. So no matter what you add, you're adding to that impervious area. Does anybody on the board have any other questions?
About how big is the garage?
I want to say it's 22 foot wide. Let me look it up, be correct. Give false information.
You would happen to have a copy of the building plans?
Yeah, she gets it back.
So it's 20 feet by 21
Okay.
outside the garage. The plans I got, they told me down below to submit the big picture.
Mhm.
No, this is good.
Looking at this to see if-
Anyone down want to see these?
Yeah, I have a question about the stoops and the steps.
In the
The
back?
proposed addition, I see the stoops and steps.
Yes.
Those are existing now?
That's existing right now as we speak.
Okay,
The 15-foot mark starts from there.
I got
And
you.
it goes.
So those will be removed?
Yes, that's going to be removed.
Okay, okay.
That's when the new addition starts.
Okay.
That gives me 15 feet to the, new road.
So, with this, you're taking out almost half of that existing sidewalk. Do you use the rest of that sidewalk going around the house?
No, that was just, for back in the 30s, I guess, water. Basically,
Okay.
that walkway there will be gone once I put the new addition to the house.
Oh, okay, so that may even change your,
That'll keep locked up.
area coverage. Because I traced over it myself yesterday, and I found that, I came up with almost the exact same number in your surveyor. Okay, but I did check that number, and it included, that concrete walkway, so if you're taking that concrete walkway out, that diminishes the, amount of variance we're talking about. Yeah, he's actually,
This part of the driveway is going to be removed also.
yeah. This is fine.
When the new calculations of the area, did they count in the sidewalk or part where there's a note here that says, portion of the driveway to be removed? Do you think that was into their calculation or figured into their calculation of the area coverage?
I would say so, because that makes
Well, no, yeah, it would reduce it, but I'm just trying to figure out if there's surveyor here or use that in their calculations along with the sidewalk.
Because all we have from the surveyor is the final number, we don't know how we got to it, how much of it is existing building, future building, new driveway. So it would be good if you could check that, and give us, and this is Youngblood from downtown.
Yes.
Just give us a breakdown, like how much of the, lot coverage is due to the building, how much is due to sidewalks, how much is due to, the driveway.
At this point, it can't hurt you, it can only help you. Because, you might go back there and say, yeah, I didn't use the driveway or the sidewalk, so it'll reduce it, so it can't hurt.
Because I want to, how much was the building, how much was sidewalk, how much was driveway? Was fixed in square footage.
Maybe even if we narrow down the driveway so that you can still get access to both garages. And narrow down that 2-lane driveway to maybe one for a certain distance, that'll take some of the area off. But if you could just have them take a look at that before next month's meeting and get us a breakdown of those areas. We're not saying that you must get all the way down to 25 because that's a variance that you're asking for. But if there's anything that you can do to reduce it from the, I guess, what was it, 32? 37, yeah, 37 that you currently have. There's some kind of way by, correcting any miscalculations and seeing if there's anything that can be narrowed down in terms of outside pavement areas.
Okay.
you know, and that will get us closer to a, you know, an acceptable variance on the lot coverage.
Okay. See what his calculations and, okay.
Yeah, so we're looking not to change your building footprint itself, but to do what we can to eliminate some of that lot coverage. And still recognizing how to get in both garages.
Okay.
You know, so maybe there's a way you can neck down that driveway that comes down to the roadway and only have a 1 lane wide driveway there, and then it widens out to get to the garage.
Yeah, technically, you know.
I think that's it on the questions I have. Does anybody down the other end have any questions? John? No. Steve?
No.
Kevin?
No, that covers. And even the stoops, what are the stoops and steps made of?
They're concrete.
They're concrete, so that's counting towards coverage now.
Absolutely.
And that would kind of, you're building over it. So it wouldn't really add to the coverage. That could be part of the miscalculation here. So it's only a little bit. Well, it's some.
Right. And that's, I think that's what we need you to do. Just take a look at that, clean up that calculation. If you, you know, kind of tabulate for us, this was existing conditions, this is the existing house, sidewalks.
You see, has that all already down on the two foot. Something they paid $1,500.
Just to be clear, the deck is gonna remain uncovered?
Uncovered deck, yes.
Okay. All right, I think with that, the only thing we're asking you to clear up is, you know, just give us a breakdown of calculations of the lot coverage.
Great.
All right, and with that in hand, I think we'd be ready to schedule this for a public hearing next month.
I make a motion. I make a motion to schedule this for a public hearing next month at our next meeting on
March 22nd.
March 22nd.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I need a second.
Second?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
You two guys.
Okay, so that's it, Jim. Just, you know, get tabulation of the lot area coverage, we'll look at that, when we open the public hearing.
With that, when you're talking about this stoop, the steps, all that, like you remove all that concrete back there, because I have, there's a existing patio, it's not gonna be used anymore there.
Yeah, that would all.
That's something that
all
will
those- Yeah, if that's gonna be out, then it's just gonna shrink that number and.
But then your differential gets.
Yeah.
Okay, all
Okay,
right.
every little bit is a couple percentage points.
Okay,
Well, most importantly, you wanna show us a breakdown of where the percentages for the covered area are.
we're great.
Right.
Perfect, all right. Thank you.
Touch base with me at the beginning of next week.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, thank you everybody for your indulgence there, and get the new project out of the way. So now we're into public hearings. First one on the list is,
I do the address.
excuse me,
I would say the address.
the address, yeah, there you go. 13 Lakeview Drive.
Come up and go to the table.
Is this a new?
Yes,
Yes, this is.
we have to approve.
So, would anybody like to make a motion to open the public hearing for, 13 Lakeview Drive application?
Make a motion to open public hearing for Lakeview Drive application. Second that. 13 Lakeview Drive. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second?
Who's down there, John?
Right, Steve seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, if you could tell us your name and present your case.
Okay, so my name is Jennifer Zarapat. I represent the owners. Their last name is Schultz, Barbara and Chiswap Schultz. That's the owner of 13 Lakeview Drive, and what they're looking for, they're seeking variances for side yard. It's 50 feet required, there is 12 existing, and the rear yard is 35 required, it's 19.1. That's the existing house, they just needed concrete, they did some renovation inside. They didn't do anything on the side or in the back. It's just the house built the way it was like for many years.
Okay, so the house is gonna remain the same footprint that it is. You're doing interior
We just
renovations.
did just years ago. But now they need the third house. And then they put the side and the back is the way it was for years, it was nothing done.
So let's see what we got. Okay, so just going down the list of bulk lot requirements here, your property is in the SR10 district, which has a minimum lot area requirement of 10,000 square feet. You have 12,700, so that checks out. Minimum lot width required is 75 feet. Your lot is 100 feet wide, so that checks out. Minimum front yard is 25 feet, and you have 55 feet, so that checks out. Minimum side yard, for one, is 15 feet. There you only have 12.3 feet, which is fairly close. Total side yard requirement is 30. You have 68.8, so that checks out. And then the minimum rear yard requirement is 35, and you have 19.1. So that also checks out. Oh, no, excuse me, that's one of the variances you need. Maximum lot coverage is 30% allowable, and you have 24.3, so that checks out. Maximum building height, you're fine. So you're here tonight for relief from minimum side yard of 15 feet down to 12.3 feet, and for a minimum rear yard of 35 feet down to 19.1 feet. And this is the existing condition of the property right now. As you can see on the map, the house is kind of tucked up and into one corner. Here's the front yard, or there's the roadway. So that's your front yard, and you're 55 feet back. And here's where you're short. This is your rear yard. It's only 19.6. And then your side yard is, I forget what the number was, 12 point something, where you need 15. And you're only proposing renovations on the interior of the building, but
Nothing outside.
Nothing on the outside. So the building inspector sent you here so we can clean up these variances, these already existing variances to allow you to do the work you need to do on the inside of the house.
Right.
Okay. Does anybody
But
else?
was the work already done on the inside of the house?
I'm sorry?
Was the work already done on the inside of the house?
The work is done. It was just, renovated without it. But it's done like years ago. It's not going to be done. Nothing else.
But we're not concerned about the work done on the inside of the house.
No.
It was just the work is what gave rise to the need for the variance.
For a variance.
Because it was
That's
otherwise,
existing.
yeah, this was a pre-existing non-conforming bulk. And when it was discovered that they renovated some of the interior space, Ben determined that they couldn't do that without applying for a variance to legalize the existing conditions that have been there for many years.
Since it was a pre-existing condition, how many years has the current owner been there?
Oh, he's 25 years in the house. And he bought that way and he didn't do anything. So it's, he cannot do anything.
Right. What triggered the review was doing the interior renovations.
But when he bought the house, it was like through the back and was like in such rough conditions. So that's what back then he renovated the house.
Okay. Any other questions? Steve, John? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from people in the audience tonight on this application? Again, this is 13 Lakeview Drive. Excuse me, there was a third item here.
Yeah, the shed.
The existing right side rear yard shed shall be
Yeah, it
moved
was
to 5 foot minimum from the property line.
right, and that was moved, and that the survey is already when they move the shed, the survey is done already with the shed when it's moved. So it's like
Oh, so the survey was done after the shed had been moved,
Yeah.
so it represents the
yeah,
existing
that's what
condition.
surveyor corrected the survey. He came after the shed was moved.
Yeah, here's 6.5 feet off of the side lot line and 5.5 feet off of the rear lot line. So that's in compliance. The sheds need to be 5 foot off of each property line in this district. Okay.
The shed was there for years, so maybe like with the wind or something was moved a little bit, so it was moved back.
Okay. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. The tax lap. Get an idea of where this property is located. So it's off of Monroe Road, going downhill, and that would be the lake along the top of the screen.
Yeah.
And your lot is right here. Okay. So, we've seen everything we need to see on this application. And there's no questions from the audience or further questions from the board. Would anybody like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
We'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, ma'am. So now you're, actually, we're probably,
Question, we go to five, we can go down
Yeah.
to 5 questions.
right,
Yeah, you should.
right, yeah. You can have a seat, probably. I'm gonna copy of the list.
Dave,
Yeah, I don't have my list, but I can give it to you, the summary that everybody is aware of. So as the board knows, it's a balancing test, weighing the benefit to the applicant, the variance, or variance is granted against any detriment to the health, safety, welfare of the community. And the 5 factors that guide that. The first one is whether there's an adverse effect on the character of the community, or detriment to nearby properties caused by the variance.
we say no to that.
The next is whether there's any feasible alternatives.
No, it's all interior work.
Next is whether there is, whether the variance sought is substantial.
No.
No,
Next is whether there's an adverse impact on the environmental conditions of the neighborhood or district.
No.
no, there's no exterior change proposed.
And then last is whether the variance, whether the need for the variance is self-created, which, as you know, an area variance is not determinative. It's relevant, but not determinative.
Yeah, well, it was self-created by doing the work that they needed to do inside the house, but I don't think that, that's necessarily a bad thing in this case. They're upgrading the condition of the house. And they already moved the shed to fix one of the variances.
So, seems like your answers are guiding towards a grant, and so, are there any conditions that you might want to place? You should talk about them now, and then you can entertain a motion to grant the variances in this condition embedded in the motion.
I don't even see any conditions.
The only condition that I would have recommended would be the shed, but the shed's already been moved. Right, so,
We would show in the survey.
so it seems like it would be a motion to grant the variance as sought, and then to authorize me to prepare a resolution and for the chairman to sign it.
That seems correct.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the variances.
Second that.
All those in favor of granting the 3 requested variances?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, then a motion to authorize me to prepare a resolution and authorize Mike to review and sign it if he finds it to be consistent with what we did here tonight.
Can we just say what he said?
Yeah. Can we have a motion to that? So we have a motion down there? We have a second for that?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done.
Who did the second on that?
In the future, you can embed that part of the motion in the other motions.
Back to the two.
If you wish. Move it quicker.
What's Tom Hayden said?
And we'll prepare this resolution and have it to you within a few weeks. And then with that, you can go back to the building inspector to proceed with the work and close out your application.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Just check
Thank
with
you.
me like the end of next week and I'll let you know how we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You don't have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You have, get DG on next, you're gonna take that one next, and so let's, get the link up to them.
Okay. Yes, so DG Realty is up next, but we've got to get the Zoom meeting linked up first.
In the headphone jack, yeah.
And then I email you the link.
Oh,
So you can call me and just click on it. Oh, you know what? I think I need to send it as well. Did we figure that out last time?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah, because it's hosted, and I can let people share the screen.
Let's see if we have a smile. Or do you have to log in first?
Yeah, I'll do that right now. And we all have to know. I don't have to have that first, but. Okay. So the meeting's up on my.
There you go.
Post.
Mike looks ecumenical.
Might be very ominous with that.
Okay, so let's just check. Press Alt A.
There you go. I can hear right now. Can't hear David.
Okay, Jay, thanks for dialing in. We only have the audio through the my laptop, so people are going to have to speak up so that Jay can hear that. And we have Mr. Higgins here from Lincoln Tully. Maybe, well, where we are is we're here tonight to open up the public hearing on the DG Realty subdivision. Would anybody like to make a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we're in the public hearing session now, and as I was saying, we have Dave Higgins from Lincoln Tully here, the engineer representing the applicant. We have Jay Monroe online, the applicant's attorney. And we'll start the public hearing by letting the applicant make a presentation to the board and the public.
Thanks. All right. First, Dave, I think you're muted, or is that on purpose?
Yes, I'm trying to keep it as a singular, can you hear me okay?
I can hear
Yeah, I want to keep the feed simple.
you. Okay, so I'd like to first of all thank you all for accommodating me and allowing me to hear here. I do appreciate it. So the first thing I think is more procedural. I believe the board should have received a letter from the planning board attorney Ashton dated February 14, 2022. And Okay, that's actually the second of the provided area, revised plan that we provided, the planning board had previously provided to us catalog plan, indicating that we no longer need that variance. So for the record, withdrawing our application for that one variance. That would leave us with one variance for the no scenario for the open space. So, I just want to make sure for the record that we're now down to one variance and that's what our application is.
Now, Dave, as far as this plan goes, this is the same lot layout, same driveway, same number of dwellings.
Yeah, the only thing is, yes, the only thing that's changed is that the area of the open space and,
The O&R
the easement in the back is divided up a little bit differently before, and so now, lot one now is just a smaller portion of the acreage is shown on there as, 0.565 acres. And the area that's behind that now is part of lot 10. So lot 10 is going to be a separate lot that you're, I believe, proposing to be offered to the town of Monroe. It's up to them whether they accept it or not. As we understand it, they have had some discussions with members of the town. And there's some interest in accepting an offer of dedication for that. So the open space would be owned by a public entity, namely the town of Monroe, or if they're not interested in taking it, some other public entity.
Okay. But this does not change the need for the green space. The green space area remains the same size it was in the previous versions.
Correct.
Okay, it's just the former ownership is being proposed differently. So all the buildings remain in the same places and all the lot lines remain in the same places, so we're still dealing with the same number of setback requirement issues.
Well, the variances that relate to the setbacks are no longer needed. The only variance that would be needed is that for the open space being less than 50% that's required.
How does that happen?
So and Jake can probably explain this better than me, but as I understand it, the town code stipulates that the open space within the private can't exist within the yard of a lot. And I believe that Jay had reviewed this with the planning board attorney and determined that if the lot is held in public ownership or by one of the lots on which the houses are not proposed, there's no yard requirement for that. And I believe that's outlined in the letter that the planning board attorney sent to the ZBA.
The original layout, the open space was a part of lot one on the subdivision. Because all of the open space was included in a recipe of the proposed building lot, all of the open space constituted a yard within the meaning of the code. And when we removed the open space and from one and created it as its own separate lot, it no longer constitutes a yard, and therefore the need for any setbacks are not required.
Dave, have you had an opportunity to review the letter that Ashley sent?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, because I did not see that letter.
I actually have it up. I'm trying to keep my phone buried because I can't get rid of the sound on it. It's distracting me. If you want to read it.
That hard copy if you want.
Yeah, hard copy.
That's the one.
Okay. I'll just leave it. Okay. Okay, as you are aware, the planning board has referred the above referenced application to you for your consideration of variances from zoning codes, open space requirements applicable to cluster subdivisions. In my prior correspondence to you, I noted that the applicant required inter alia, and it must be a legal term,
Yeah, among other things.
an area variance in the town code which provides as follows: the required open space land may not include private yards located within 75 feet of a principal dwelling. At the planning board meeting on February 10th, 2022, the applicant presented the revised subdivision plan that proposes to locate the open space entirely on a separate lot and no longer on an individual lot, lot 1. It thus appears that the variance from town code is no longer required, provided the open space lot will be owned by the town or other acceptable entity. The planning board had no objections and reviewed this revision favorably. I ask that you convey this to your board. Please do not hesitate to contact me for further information. All right, so this is the first I'm reading this letter. It was written last week. You know, and I'm not an attorney, so I can't speak to that. You know, I have to, you know, review the code. Our interpretation is that if this green area, which consists of a 150-foot wide O&R easement, and at this end, this irregular shaped lot is part of the open space, and this other portion, this other triangular portion, is the open space. Between open space A and B, they still have the same shortcomings in terms of overall area for open space. But they say that this eliminates the need for setbacks from the open space area to the building. And I don't.
And that was like on 4 or 5 lots.
Yeah.
Around that. Wasn't it?
My understanding of what happened here is lot 1 on the former plan actually consisted of not just the lot that you see here. It was the entire thing that you see that's in green. They had designed it that way for one reason or another. I don't know why, but that's what it was. So as a result, the yard of that lot 1, because it was the whole bit that wrapped all around the other lots, the parts of that yard that were closer than 75 feet to some of the other dwellings, that's what was giving rise to the need for a variance from that 75-foot requirement, because it was a yard. It was a yard in lot 1. And now what they've done is they've chopped it off and said, all right, well, that's no longer going to be a yard. We're going to just take that entire green area. It's the same green area, but we're going to not make it part of one of our proposed lots, and we're going to dedicate it to the town or some other public entity if they're willing to take it. And they're saying, conditioned upon that occurring, then there's no longer need for that variance of the code, because it's not a yard anymore. It's just space and some lot that's been dedicated to the town for open space purposes.
And that's up, including all of that, the easement.
That doesn't involve the O&R area. Am I correct?
Not just the green shape.
Right.
No, it doesn't.
No, I see that, but because it all wrapped, the old one wrapped around.
Right, and the O&R easement was never presented as open space because the planning board felt that that's already a utilized piece of land, it's a utility. So that's not part of the open space available to the applicant, so that 5 acres goes away right off the top. So all they had was this little triangle here and this irregular lot on the opposite end. And between the two of them, they had about half of what they needed in terms of open space area.
Yeah, and if you recall from the last meeting, what was new at the last meeting, they presented the letter from their conservationists, their ecologists, who said, you know, look, under the code, that area of that easement does count. It should count. It does count. We know that we don't have the ability to get that issue before you for a decision, but it meets the criteria in the code for conservation space And even if you or the planning board disagrees, at least give us the benefit of listening to our argument on that and have it weigh in favor of the grant of our variances that we seek.
So just not by calling it a yard, eliminates.
Yeah, physically nothing has changed.
No, so just so that, I guess, the code or the law on that, just not calling it a yard.
Yeah.
Eliminates.
Yeah, it's not,
Yeah,
it's not just not calling it a yard.
Right, Kevin raises a good point. Yes, it's just not the label. It's, hey, we're going to dedicate it to the town.
Yeah,
We're going to give this to you, and it'll be yours. And that's part of it, not counting
right. The town or some other.
public.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the legal requirement is on that, but not in their own.
Right, so they carve off these little areas of open space, and then they lump it together with all of the orange areas that are easements for O&R. This little dog leg up here is a driving path to get to the top.
Right.
And then that's a 150-foot wide easement all the way across the back, which is approximately 5 acres in of itself. So now they're offering to give this cluster of lots that are shown in that color right here. Right? We're going to give all of that to the town.
Is the town committed to taking?
I don't know. And then all of this also comes off the tax rolls. No longer, billable or taxable lots. The town owns it. Does the town want to own a piece of land that has
Town said no.
a O&R easement?
Well, that's, wouldn't you need to know that?
Yeah.
Well, what they're saying is they're willing to take that risk.
It's my understanding that there were conversations with town officials, and there is a willingness to accept them.
And I
I
think,
didn't participate in it, I didn't do anything other than, I was told that those conversations had been.
and I think what the applicant is basically saying procedurally is, I think Mr. Monroe led with, therefore we're withdrawing that part of the application. They're not asking you to decide, grant it or not. If I suppose I haven't thought all the way through it, but I suppose, if you grant the variance for open space, you will, and not grant the variance for the other. And if the applicant isn't successful in getting the town to take that space, their whole plan that they presented has to be changed anyway. They won't have gotten the variance because they've withdrawn it, but B, any grant of a variance here will be on the plans submitted, conditioned upon adherence to the plans submitted. So, and you can make it conditional. Again, not saying you should go that way or not. I'm saying, in response to the question,
Right.
you would make it conditional upon them following this plan and that being acceptable, and the town or public entity taking ownership, et cetera. If that never comes to be, then the variance could be null and void. Again, if you were inclined to go in that direction,
I'm just wondering why it took 6 months to get to this conclusion on their part. If it was all that simple to turn it into a lot that's to be owned by the town, or as it says here, other acceptable public entity, that's pretty wide open. Exactly.
Well, why don't we ask Mr. Monroe, are you there?
I hear.
What's the origin of the law on that? The dedication to the town or another public entity? Is there? I've not looked at the law on that. Is that codified somewhere, or is there? What does it have to be?
Certainly if it's offered, accepted by the town, that satisfies the requirement. Your code also allows for homeowners associations to be created and own open space. There is a point of contention I have with the town planning board attorney on that issue. I didn't really pursue it because I got an indication that the town is willing to take the property, so there was no need for me to push that. So my conversations basically as outlined by Ashton Query in a letter, basically stating that, based on, that assuming the town is willing to take this as open space, we do not need this variance, and I've been advised that the town is at least considering and has no objection at this time taking the land as open space.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Okay, any questions by the board members?
Is there a presentation?
well, can I make my presentation, because I didn't get through yet? Let's lay it out. I just threw the application. So basically, we're down to one variance, needed for, the requirement that 50% of our gross area be considered open space as defined in your code. We are short that area because the planning board took the position that the land consequences covered by the utility easement doesn't qualify as open space. Now, just procedurally, just so you know how we got here, this is a cluster subdivision application that was made for the planning board, and pursuant to your code, when an application is made for a cluster subdivision, it is the planning board exclusively that has jurisdiction to decide whether or not the applicant is to proceed with either a cluster or with a conventional subdivision plan. And in this particular case, that's in your cluster regulations. In this particular case, and the planning board is required to make a finding this which plan they want you to go with. In this particular case, your planning board decided that they preferred the cluster plan. So but in doing so, we recognize that at least this one variance that we're seeking tonight. So in the referral letter from the planning board to your board, the letter dated November 13, 2020, from Ashton Corey. This application was referred to you for consideration of variances, and in that letter, I'll just read a couple of things from it. It's on the second page of that letter. The planning board is in favor of a cluster subdivision of the property as opposed to a conventional subdivision layout. In reviewing the proposal, throughout the review of this application, the planning board was in favor of a cluster subdevelopment to preserve open space and limit disturbances, particularly with respect to the potential that the development may be visible in the future. Okay, so this application was referred to by the planning board because we do need these variances, but their need for the variances was based on the decision by the planning board to require us to proceed with the cluster as opposed to the conventional plan. We have no problem with proceeding with the cluster. We feel it is the better plan. We feel it is better for the public. We feel everything about the plan is superior to the conventional plan. So we are now here because there is a question as to whether how the open space, how land encumbered by the utilities then needs to be characterized as to whether or not it has any conservation value or whether it can be counted as open space. The planning board initially made a determination that because the land is encumbered by utilities that it cannot be considered as open space. That's where I take exception to the planning board because there is nothing in the code that states that open land that is encumbered by utilities that cannot qualify as open space and conservation value. So after the initial referral was made, we hired Mr. Nowicki, who is on the line here with us, in his letter, in order to evaluate the property to determine whether or not this parcel with utility easement, whether or not it has conservation value as defined in your code, and if it does, it would therefore qualify as open space. After this matter, the original public hearing in this matter was adjourned, we took that letter back to the planning board at a technical session. It was not a full board. At that time, the board chair, planning board chair was there, council was there, I believe that engineer was there, inviting one other board member. We presented the letter, and basically the board said, listen, you're already in front of the CBA, we're not going to consider this letter, take it to them, show it to them, do with it what you want at that board. And we said, I didn't necessarily agree with that, but I took them at face value and said that we would. So before the last meeting, I submitted Mr. Noe's letter. The analysis is fairly detailed, it is site specific, and it does set forth a conclusion that this property does in fact have conservation value and would qualify as open space, pursuant to the terms of your code. Now, we are here tonight for an area variance. We are not here for you to consider or make a determination on that particular point, because we don't have jurisdiction to do so. However, we were directed to bring that letter here to you, and we've done that. And I believe that the letter and the conclusions in it are relevant to your determination tonight as to whether or not benefits to the applicant outweigh detriments to the public or to the community, because that is the balancing test not to engage in considering variance. So, as to whether or not, if in fact you can determine that this property does have conservation value, I feel it's relevant to at least 2 of the 5 factors you have to consider under the code or in doing the balancing test. And that is 1, whether this is a substantial variance, and number 2, as to whether or not the variance will affect the physical or environmental characteristics of the property and the surrounding neighborhood. If this property clearly has conservation value, I think that clearly indicates that there is no environmental impact that would result in granting variance. Also, if the land does have conservation value, as indicated by the code, this property, including this property in the open space, it reduces the substantiality of the request. So I think that the letter is relevant to those extent. You're not asked to pass on it or direct the planning board or anyone else as to what it may or may ultimately mean in regards to how the open space is designated, but it is relevant to those issues. So, in granting, in doing the variance, I know you all know that you have to do the balancing test and that you have to consider the 5 factors. It's our position, and I stated this last time, that this is one of those rare circumstances where the granting of the variance will actually be a benefit to the community, a benefit to the overall neighborhood, and will in fact create no adverse or detrimental impacts at all. So, in that regard, the fact is that by granting variance, allowing it to proceed with cluster, we are going to substantially reduce ground coverage. That's going to substantially reduce stormwater impacts. We are going to build 9 structures as opposed to 15 under the conventional plan. We're going to have a significantly smaller footprint. The planning board has confirmed in their letter that there will be an impact, reducing visual impacts for this property. And quite frankly, I've searched the record to find any possible negative impact that may result here, and I can't find it. So, briefly going through the 5 factors, the first one is whether there's granting the variance will have any adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood or community. The answer is no. two, is it substantial? It's possible that it's substantial, but I think that substantiality, when considered as a totality of the circumstances, is reduced when we consider this Louis' letter. Is there another feasible way for us to do this, to get the benefit that we're seeking? The answer is no. We were compelled to come here by the planning board because they chose the cluster, and there is no other feasible way for us to do this. Number four, will the granting of variance have any negative impact on the physical environment or the surrounding areas? The answer is no. We'll have a benefit. And number five, is this self-created? This is one of the few circumstances where this hardship is not self-created. We were directed to come here by a choice made by the planning. So we didn't make this choice, the planning board did, and they directed us to come here to get these variances. So I think that's pretty much summed up. So basically my position was this: 4 of the 5 factors clearly are the answer to the no. The only one that may be potentially in the positive might be substantiality, and that's just because of the numerical deviation from the standard as to what we're providing. But in totality of circumstances, I don't think it's substantial. So, in terms of doing the final decisions made based on a balancing test, and for you to do that, you have to determine whether or not there are actually detriments to be balanced against the benefits of the applicant. And if you don't find any, there's no balancing test. There's no impediment to granting this variance. I just want, the courts are quite clear on this particular issue, and there are a number of cases that I've read over the years where the court has considered that even when an application may include a substantial variance request, there is no basis to deny the variance if, in fact, there is no adverse impact from to the surrounding area. And if you bear with me, I'd like to just read the case that was just decided this December. Mr. McCartney, it's 66 OCRTT LLC versus the town of Hempstead. It's 283rd 682 for Lawyer Club. But in that case, the court found the following: now, it is rational for the board to conclude that the requested variance is more substantial. Its determination to deny the application was otherwise conclusory and lacked any objective factual basis. In particular, there was little or no evidence before the board to show that the granting of the variance would have an undesirable effect on the character of the neighborhood, adversely impact physical and environmental conditions, or otherwise result in a detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. So I'm just reading this to you because there are literally dozens of cases where the court has basically required the planning board to only deny variances where you can identify a resulting detriment from the granting of the variance. There is none. Courts have reversed or affirmed the granting of the variance. So based on that, I've talked a lot. I apologize for that. Mr. Nowicki is on the line. I don't know whether anybody has questions or to what extent the board wants to consider his letter, or they have questions for him or for me. But thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you.
Does anybody on the board want to hear from Mr. Nowicki? The letter that he submitted really has no bearing on the variance that's being asked for. That decision was already made at the planning board level, that the O&R easement is a utility easement. It has the capability of being defoliated by O&R at any time they want. They can build additional utilities in there. So, that's why they didn't consider it open space. They have, So, as far as that letter goes, we can't determine whether or not what he has to say has any bearing on what's being presented here.
Well, let me just interrupt there. It's not that it has no bearing. It's that there's not an issue before the board as to what is the proper interpretation of the code. What does the code say? What does the code mean? Does it qualify or does it not? That is not before the board. That's not the board. A zoning board does not have the jurisdiction to review a determination of a planning board. Right. It can review a determination of the building inspector, but that's not what happened here. That this is not something where Ben made the determination. This was something that was placed by code in the hands of the planning board, and the planning board proceeded the way it did. So, Mike, you're right that the issue of the interpretation of the code is not before the board, and therefore you're not being asked to say, okay, let's take a look at what's in that letter and let's decide does it count or does it not. But it's inaccurate to say that it has no bearing. It has a bearing. The issues have a bearing in terms of the quality of what's there, as Mr. Monroe is advocating. He said that it's relevant to 2 of the 5 factors for the area variance. Right. So in that respect, yes, it does have some merit.
What concerns me is that we're hearing just from one side on this. We didn't have our own biologists or wildlife specialists go out there and examine the area. We don't have any counterbalance to Mr. Nowicki's letter.
Well, maybe one thing you might want to do is talk to Mr. Nowicki and ask him some questions. If you've got hard questions for him, ask him some questions. And whether he can give you the answers or not, maybe that's, you have the opportunity to do some of that now.
What I'm concerned about, though, if we start going into the technicalities regarding whether or not that easement area is suitable for open space, then doesn't that open the door to all the other technical issues on the subdivision? Because I hate to start.
No, I don't know.
We have, other questions that, planning board has.
No, again, it's completely up to you. Does anybody want to hear from him and want to explore it? It does not open up. Certainly you don't have jurisdiction to make any determinations that are solely within the jurisdiction of the planning board. Mm-hmm. There's zoning board issues and there's planning board issues, and
the planning board made this decision that it not considered.
They, as I understand it, in speaking to the planning board attorney, there was never an actual formal determination. They didn't have a resolution and they didn't consider it and all in favor, aye, or make a written determination of some sort. I think, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, they made the presentation and it was basically assumed and determined, and the planning board proceeded as though this area does not count, which is the whole reason why they're here. Because the planning board is saying, look, we don't think this counts. They didn't do it formally by way of determination, but they clearly were.
They clearly thought about it, because that's one of the 2 reasons they're here before us.
Right, and the applicant is saying, look, it's not that clear cut. It's not like there's, it's not like trying to count wetlands, towards your available, computations where you can't do it. It's black and white in the code. The applicant is saying it's not black and white in the code. There's certain things that, they talk about the character of the land and certain characteristics of the land, and that these are things that have quote unquote conservation value. And then it's up to the planning board to determine which areas that have conservation value are to be preserved. And they want to have you have at least 50% of your area, you're going to do a cluster, be an area that has quote unquote conservation value. They viewed this as this doesn't count because it's burdened by a utility easement, and so they proceeded here for relief. And so Mr. Monroe was saying, okay, we get that. We're stuck with that, with the planning board's view. We'd like to get it before you because we think the planning board's wrong. We'd like to take a look at that, but we know we can't. I've had a discussion with Mr. Monroe about it. I think we both agree that it's not properly, there's no jurisdiction to bring it here. He would like to say, look, this is what the code says, and this is what the expert says, and so therefore the planning board's wrong, but he's not here doing that. He's here saying, look, I know I can't say that, but what I am saying is that this has some value that weighs in favor of you exercising your discretion on the balancing test. And if you want to hear from my, conservation expert, my ecological expert, he'll tell you why this area is not devoid of conservation value. So why you should, it's not like it's a paved roadway that has no value. It's got some value, so let me show you what it is. That's the concept as I'm understanding.
In their opinion.
In there,
And that just
yes.
goes back to what the chairman was saying, you have to take, the letter, we got the letter last meeting, read it, right? But it would have been nice for a counterpoint to that, another opinion to it. But then you just get into a rabbit hole.
What year?
Owner could be just paved road.
They don't have an easement for ingress and egress, right? They have an easement for utility purposes. I've not seen it, but there's certainly, they don't own the property.
Yeah.
They own the right to use the property for utility
But I
purposes.
guarantee you that, you can't build on it, any structures, right? So, they can't make their lots bigger in order to fit the houses on there better because the owner easement's not gonna let them use that way. The owner would probably rather see that parcel, belong to one entity rather than, 15 different, or 9 different lots. And they've really changed their position on what you can do in and near their utility lines since 9/11. So they've become much stricter in that because, in the past, like in Harriman Business Park, the utility line that runs through here also runs through Harriman Business Park. And they allowed only parking beneath that O&R easement. They wouldn't allow any structures to be built there, just parking, and they didn't want any main roads there unless they just crossed in and out. And now now you go down there and those parking lots are filled with trailers overnight. Did they really anticipate that? I don't think they wanted it. All right, so.
Can I be heard briefly on this, just for 1 minute? Basically what happened is, I wasn't involved in the planning board process when they made the initial determination that the land constrained by the utilities could not be considered open space. That came to be, I got involved in well after that, but I looked back at the minutes and it wasn't a big conversation as to whether or not, as to why this property would not be considered as conservation value. Basically, the planning board just took the position that we're not going to give any conservation value of open space to any space that's encumbered by utilities. So when I looked at this, I totally disagree with that. That's not what your code says. Your code does not specifically state that open areas that are encumbered by utility easements cannot be considered open space. It does not say that. The only thing that characterizes whether or not open land can be considered open space is whether or not it has conservation value. So when we hired Mr. Nowicki, we hired him because I wasn't in agreement with this finding. I hired him to come in to do an analysis and tell me yes or no, does this have conservation value? And he quite frankly has told me that it absolutely does have conservation value under the code. And because it does have conservation as defined in your code, it should be considered open space. And that's why I took the letter to the planning board. Planning board just told me, forget it. We're not going to consider it. I told them I didn't agree with that. They said take it up to the ZBA. We're in front of them now. It's got enough pending application. Okay. Decided that's how we were going to proceed. That's why the letter is in front of me. But, this notion that just because the space is encumbered by utilities, that eliminates its ability to be considered qualifying open space for the purposes of a cluster is simply not in your code. It is not true. That is a falsehood. This land can be considered as open space if it has conservation value. Now listen, it's not for me to present my evidence. And I'm required when I present evidence to present empirical data. And that's what I did. I got an expert, Mr. Nowicki, I presented it. It wasn't for me to go out and get an opposing viewpoint.
No, that would be the responsibility of the town planning board to get that opposing viewpoint.
I'm not trying to make it more of this than it is. Because ultimately, you're not deciding.
All right, so why don't we do this, Jay? Why don't we have Mr. Newiggy go through his letter, that way you can present your side of the case. We'll do what we will with that information, but at least we've heard from him and it's been entered into the record.
I think that's absolutely fair, I think that's absolutely good.
Okay.
Thank you there.
Yeah, totally.
Mike, okay.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear Mike?
Yeah, yes, I can hear Mike. Mike, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and your firm? So we know who we're speaking with?
Sure. Yeah, sure. My firm is Ecological Solutions. I've been doing work I'm from New York. I've been doing work in New York for 30 some odd years, including their town and town surroundings. I was actually down a month for a day doing a job. I'm a biologist, wildlife biologist graduated from ESF, Environmental Science and Forestry back in the 80s, so I'm old. And I specialize in wetland delineations and threatened endangered species and wildlife. For this property, my conclusion was that it absolutely has conservation value in relation to wildlife. I look at everything from a wildlife perspective if you bring out conservation. In a densely populated area where this property is, you can have a connection, a dispersal area, a corridor where wildlife can use those areas without having to utilize roads or crossings or people's yards. That is significant. It connects this parcel like a link in a chain to all the other parcels in the area. Allows wildlife to utilize these areas when they're traveling, especially at night. That's the summary of that report. Hello?
Yeah. So that's the summary of your report.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Chief of the wildlife. Yeah, sure.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Nowicki? That's enough. Okay, thank you for your time, Mr. Nowicki.
How you doing?
Thank you, Mike.
My pleasure.
Is there anything else the applicant wants to present at this time?
Only I would say if anybody has any questions generally about the project, I think we just had a pretty large discussion, lengthy discussion about why we're here for the variance for the open space, and then the discussions about the open space area, the areas that were considered open space, areas that were not considered open space. If there's any general questions about the subdivision, I'll be happy to present it. I just don't want to waste anybody's time.
Are there any members of the audience that have any questions on this project, DG Realty? Yes, sir. Please to the podium and give us your name, address.
My name is Joseph Kowitz. I'm the neighbor of the project. I live 270 Roads.
I'm sorry, can you last name again?
Jacobowitz, Jacobowitz.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm looking here to this project. We're looking forward to the project should be built because we want to have more neighbors by us. Will impact the community there, and the people on the block. My kids looking for more neighbors. And we're more than happy to have this project going. Get going fast.
Okay. Thank you. So you're on Scunnamunk Street. So Dave, if you would, if you could just, quickly go over the map here so that, everybody understands what it is that's being proposed. I'm using your latest color-coded map I have up on the screen. You could speak to the number of lots, number of dwelling units,
Okay, I guess we'll make sure then to give a little bit of background. So as Jay Myro had mentioned before, the applicants had prepared a subdivision plan to the town planning board. It was a conventional yield plan, which indicated an as-of-right development for 15 single-family lots. And over the course of the plan development with the planning board, it was determined that a cluster subdivision was the preferred way to go. So the subdivision plan that you have before you with the requested variance shows a total of 10 lots with 9 building lots, and 6 of those lots having duplex units on them, the other 3 having a single dwelling unit on them. So the total is 15 dwelling units spanning across 9 lots, with the 10th lot being an open space conservation area to be given to a public entity, potentially the town of Monroe. The project has a cul-de-sac road off of Scunnamunk Street. The cluster plan, I believe, has demonstrated significant reduction in the total disturbance to the site, a reduction in visual disturbance, a reduction in trees removed, a reduction in impervious pavement areas, driveways, building areas, etc., which is the reason why the planning board, I believe, has expressed its support for the cluster plan. And one of the other things I think, Mike, that you had mentioned before as you were talking about the open space, one of the benefits that I hadn't really thought of was that the cluster plan actually does provide all of that land in the back as one ownership, which I think is a fair comment that I made, is that Orange and Rockland probably would rather have one owner of that land as opposed to having, the numerous that we had on the conventional plan, which I think was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think 9 lots would share ownership of that easement area. I think that would certainly a cleaner plan with the as a single lot as currently proposed, and I imagine that one that would be easier for Orange and Rockland to work with in the future. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to go through those.
No, I just wanted to make one clarification on the matter of the conventional subdivision plan for the yield plan. That's true, came up with 15 lots, but that under the cluster plan that allows you as many as 15 lots. It doesn't guarantee you 15 lots.
No, but we have prepared the subdivision plan, which was reviewed by the planning board, and they did create a negative declaration to include secret on that plan showing, the 15 dwelling units on 9 lots.
Okay. But I just wanted to make that clear that you're not entitled to 15 lots.
That's correct.
Correct.
I would anticipate if the variance isn't granted, they would probably proceed with a 15 lot conventional plan.
I'm not exactly sure that's true, but it doesn't matter. We agreed to reduce the number of lots to 9 and to build 9 structures as opposed to 15. And if I can make one other comment, because I think hopefully just confirm this for me. The process with the planning board is basically that, assuming we get this, if we are granted these variances, we are allowed to proceed under the cluster. If we're denied variances, we're entitled by
And it's one variance right now. I think Jay was just mentioning variances. I think it's just one variance now that we need.
Right. And I was gonna point that out also, that, under the previous iteration of the plan where those parcels were part, the open space parcels were part of one lot, and the O&R easement was separate. Now you've pulled it all together and you're offering it up to the town of Monroe. That action still has to be taken. So what we had on the plan before was we had lots that were short on their side yard or rear yard, or actually building setbacks from open space areas. What's required is 75, what was provided is 30. One lot. Oh, excuse me, that was 50. Yes, that is 50. So we had one lot with 35 and 15, and then another setback of 50, where there needed to be 75. And then on the opposite end of the project, you again had your first lot that needed 75-foot offset from the open space, and you only had 25 available. So those lots, lot number 1, lot 6, lot 7, and lot 8, you are no longer requesting side yard setbacks from the main dwelling structures.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm taking it on the word of the attorney that presented this and you guys that that definition really does eliminate the need to have these yard setbacks. I don't see what's changed by calling it all under one ownership and saying the town owns it. I still see the clustered lots as being close to it, but we're not gonna make a determination on that. You've taken that off the desk by way of this letter. So the only thing that we have before us is the question of the open space area. So
if I could just comment on that, the significance of eliminating that one variance is that, the code didn't want yards to be, didn't want open space in yards to be proximate to buildings. The open space is no longer part of the yard. It's not a yard on a lot. So that was significant. That's what the code was looking to eliminate. And when we eliminated the open space being part of the yard, that no longer is relevant. So
okay, so
you're not considering that anymore. So
right, so we're not passing judgment on those issues tonight regarding the yard setbacks. So going through the numbers here, the total tract area is 9.5 acres. The total easements out of that is 4.2 acres, which leaves the allowable land, developable land, the total developable land at 5.34 acres. Now, under the cluster plan, you have to have set aside 50% of that for open space, so that's 2.67. And then what you've provided is buildable land is 3.7 acres, and then you have 2 open space areas that combine to 1.66 acres. So we're looking at the difference from a 50-50 split to a 69-31 split generally. That's the degree to which we're short open space area under this plan. And that's the only decision we have before us tonight. So, having said that, and if there are no further questions or comments from the audience? I go back to the board again. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, so at that point, I would like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
So now, as far as your options moving forward procedurally, you can do one of a couple things. You could consider the balancing test of the 5 factors and, proceed as you have, most times in the past, which is make a decision tonight on the record, and direct me to prepare a resolution to that effect. If there's any legal issues, legal advice because there's quite a few legal issues here. If there's anything anybody would like to ask me, I could answer any legal questions that you have in an attorney-client session. You also have 62 days from the date that the public hearing is closed to render a decision. So it could be that if you're not ready to decide it tonight, you can decide it at a future meeting. So those are all things that you could do, all options that are available to you.
Well, one of the things that strikes me is the letter that we just received from Ashley regarding this whole change and the 10-lot plan. This is the first time you've seen the letter, the plan I looked at previously, and
I think we received this on the 14th. Via email.
okay, I didn't see it. I checked my email weekly, not daily.
Would the board be open to doing the attorney-client brief here? Well, make a motion.
We would make a motion.
Have a little.
Yeah, if you want to get legal advice on the, legal standards or other legal parts of it, you can make a motion to go into an attorney-client session for the purpose of receiving legal advice.
I'd like to make a motion to do an attorney-client session for legal advice.
Certainly.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Here too, I was questioning, do you have anybody
So-
here?
You got it, Mike.
Right, I just figured we'll let you know where we stand at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's make a motion to come out of the attorney-client session.
Make a motion to come out of attorney-client session. I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so where we stand at the moment is we are not going to make our determination tonight. There were several new legal issues that were brought up during this public hearing. We went over them publicly. Jay read through them. We have the letter from Ashley Corey. We heard from Mike DeWicki. We heard from Dave Higgins on the layout of the subdivision. So we have all the relevant facts. We just want to review a little bit of the code before we finalize a determination on this. So for tonight, this matter is over. The board will let the applicants know when, to next appear, because we have 62 days to make a determination. I imagine it's going to be at the March meeting, but, there's possibility may not be delayed. So we'll let you know, but let's shoot for the March meeting. And with that, did you do? Jay? And Mike?
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Again, thanks for allowing me to do this, all very appreciate it.
Nope.
Okay, have a good evening, everyone.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Likewise, thank you for your time.
Okay.
too.
Safe ride.
Good night, Dave.
Yep. Good night. Okay, and that brings us to our final item on the public hearings list, and it's the Eagle View Estates subdivision. Dave, if you can come forward and first allow us to open the public hearing. Anybody like to make a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Noreen, one question, did you get the mail receipt?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, David, would you like to do a brief introduction of the project that we have before us?
Sure. Well, I'm sure the board's very familiar with what this project equals through subdivision. We're here before you requesting a variance to the zoning code regarding the use of a septic system for either a combined septic system to satisfy the zoning code determination of a central sewer facility, or a separate septic system per lot for the one lot subdivision on Bates Road. So as the board knows, we started this project back in approximately September of 2018. We've gone through many variations with the project. As with the previous project, there was a clustered development that was proposed for many months that did not come to fruition. Then the design evolved into the conventional subdivision. Based on that conventional subdivision, we received approvals from Mudna Basin and their engineer to connect to the sewer system of the town of Monroe within the Mudna Basin district, which is also governed by Orange County Sewer. In addition to that, we had to receive and secure Orange County DPW approval for a driveway entrance off of Lakes Road to service the two houses. We did get that after several months, and we got their final approval. During that process, and after probably 2 years of design, Orange County Sewer, or Orange County DPW, mandated that the town of Monroe not allow properties to connect to their sewer, to the Mudna Basin sewer system, because the town of Monroe has exceeded their capacity for sewer. This was not brought about by the owner. It wasn't brought about by us ignoring the zoning code. We had satisfied all the aspects of the zoning code. In fact, we would not even be here if Orange County didn't issue that mandate, or you could look at it a different way, if the town of Monroe had governed their sewer capacity to the extent to service all of its residents. So as a result, we're here today to try to solve this. One solution would be allowing a septic system for each lot. Of course, according to the zoning code, lots of 15,000 square feet or would be allowed to connect to the sewer system. That's what our original design was, because each lot is over 15,000, one lot is 19,500, the other lot is 22,500. And we have satisfied that requirement. But for it to have a septic system, a lot needs to be an acre. We don't have that, as mentioned. We have 19,000 and 22,000. So what we propose to the board at no risk is installing a fully designed septic system on each lot that would be used to bridge the gap of time needed for the town of Monroe to address their capacity issues with William Basin and Orange County DPW and allow the residents to once again hook up. We are proposing without question to install the septic system on each lot and the approved sewer system for each lot. Again, that was reviewed and approved by the William Basin. So we would do everything within the sewer system, including the laterals up to the existing manhole, but not hook up until town of Monroe satisfies that requirement. But yet each house could be serviced by the septic system to bridge that time. Again, it's not a temporary system, it would be a fully designed septic to satisfy each house requirement. And it is a reasonable request at this time, given the fact of the investment of the owners fully invested into this project. Not 2 months, not 4 months, not a year. I mean, we're talking over close to 3 years now. Now, part of that was due to COVID. There was some time lapse associated with those events, and we were all affected by it, I'm sure. But yet, we diligently worked through, in good faith, we're believing that we would be able to hook up to the town of Monroe and William Basin sewer system. Again, that was something imposed on us. It wasn't a neglect on our part. And we asked that the zoning board consider this to allow the 2 houses to go up or to be built.
Are they conventional septic systems?
Yeah. Well,
or aerated, or?
No, it'll be conventional, but there'll be Elgin systems to reduce the footprint of the absorption fields.
So your application actually has, if you, I'm sure you recall, it still had the 2 different options, right? Are you still pursuing the option number 1 was to look for interpretation of the phrase central sewer facility by suggesting that you have 1 septic for the 2 lots.
Yes.
As the first go at it, and if that's not acceptable, then option 2 was this temporary variance, essentially.
Well, I guess that term could be used. I mean, we're looking at the variance as a bridge until the town of Monroe meets their requirements to all the residents within the William Basin. I mean, this is not just a halt or a stop on one specific area. This is a stop on all of the William Basin area. So it's something that needs to be considered. And again, this is not at the onset of the design process. We've been involved with this for years and quite vested in it. So also, David, to answer your question, we had investigated the central sewer system. We had asked for a definition from the building department. Building department issued a letter that did not give a definition, but it gave other, criteria, but it did not define what a central sewer facility is.
Right.
Because the zoning code does not have a definition for it. We would have liked that definition. I quite honestly feel that the central absorption system satisfies that, given this parameters, it is only 2 houses connected to it. Yet there was this other option. In both cases, a septic would need to be installed.
I'm looking for a plan that shows. Okay, you submitted several different copies of the same sheet essentially. And
Well,
one of them has,
well, we submitted C3 and C5 to each design. So you have a C3 and C5 plan for the sewer design, and you have a C3 and a C5 plan for the septic design. Well, it is design, the location and the absorption field.
I gotta open up the C5 to see
Again,
absorption.
the C5, that would. Our intent was to show you, to the extent that we did design the conventional sewer lateral to the main.
Okay, so, we know that the lot doesn't meet the, required area, to have septic on, individual septic systems on each lot. You provided us the layouts of what that would look like. And you are staying, 100 feet away from the lake that's across the road. However, this is also in the aquifer overlay area for Walton Lake. So, we have to take that into consideration. Now, this one has two septic systems, and this one, C5. Okay, so one of them shows the septic systems, and then the other one shows the alternative to the sewer main.
Well, alternative is another word, but that's an approved design that we will be installing along with the septic.
Now, I noticed that you have an easement in here that's 7 feet wide. That seems awful narrow for pipeline easement. I mean,
Planning board had no problem with it.
Is that a C5 you got up there now?
yeah, this is a C5. This is the one that shows the sewage running out the back to the force main.
Now, did all of them show the same location of the wells, or are the wells moving at all?
I think we talked about that last time. The wells did move.
They did?
Yeah,
They did not.
You see the well ups as well.
Yeah. But on the other C5, it seemed to be in a different spot. That's what I was well. Unless it's just a different scale.
Well, no, that what you're looking at right now is a C5 plan for the sewer system.
Right.
So just for the sewer. So in that particular case, the well is not pertinent because there are no required separations.
No, yeah, separations from the force main are pertinent.
Well, would be 10 feet. In this case, granting this variance, the wells would be located as shown right now.
Yeah, so it seems to be a little bit further away from the houses.
Correct.
And that appears to be able to comply with the 100-foot setback from the septic system.
Correct. The wells will be located uphill from the septic.
All right, so the only matter that's really here before us tonight, as the ZBA, is the area variance that they're requesting. Rather than having a full acre, they have less than half an acre of lot area on each of these parcels. They comply with the rest of the building setback limits. Other technical matters, such as like the width of the proposed sewer line easement that's up to the planning board to determine, as is the actual design of the septic systems and, their compliance with all of the, required sanitary code. So, again, what we get down to is the only variance they're asking for is to build these septic systems on less than 1 acre lots, and these are, half acre lots and less. And they're also in the Walt Lake Aquifer system, overlay area. So,
But part of their application is also that other option, which not really, the request for relief is an interpretation that central sewer would include a combined absorption field.
right,
One or two.
which we don't have a sketch plan for, because I wonder how that would be carried out, if that was a solution.
Was that submitted? Do we have a sketch plan for that or not? It's,
No, we
it's,
did, because.
it's just an interpretation,
Correct.
not gonna decide it until you.
We receive a favorable interpretation.
Right.
I mean, we have no definition yet for central sewer, so.
Right, so yeah, Ben's letter, his August 30th letter, he didn't give you like, all right, well, it means this, but he clearly made a determination that wouldn't satisfy the definition, and that's what you're appealing from, as that part of your application. Got it.
So I just want to see the building department's letter. But if this is here as a subdivision, wouldn't you have been sent here by the planning board, not Ben? See Ben's letter in my package. So this is August.
The request, David's request is right before he.
And has the planning board weighed in on this proposal?
They referred us to the building department, to write a letter to the building department, and the building department responded.
Yeah, I did, I just read it. I was looking for something from the planning board.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, I guess in that instance, if you are a central sewer system, it's an on-site central sewer system, still seems like 1 acre is minimum required, you can have 1 acre when you add up the 2 lots. I don't know, in my opinion, it kind of goes against the grain of everything we're trying to establish out there by getting, houses off the septic systems. Here we are proposing septic systems on lots that are smaller than 1 acre in size and within the Walton Lake Aquifer, right across the street from the edge of the lake. And whether you do it with one system or two central, or one central system that services both lots, or two separate systems, you still, have the same condition. You have a central water system that's probably treating 2,000 gallons, say 1,000 gallons a day from each house. And you're right across the street from Walton. And that's the reasoning behind the 1 acre requirement for lots with septic systems, because that applies in all the zoning district areas where less than 1 acre of the lot area is required. So that's kind of consistent throughout the town, that requirement. And here we're looking for substantial difference, probably 50% or greater on both.
Well,
and I understand that you're promising to build, force main, and you're going to show how that's going to go out the back of the houses. But even at that, right now, you've got the plumbing coming out the front to your proposed absorption fields, and in the alternative where you connect to the sewer system on lot. This unnumbered lot here is coming you're coming out of the back of the house. So you have it in the front, and now you're taking it out the back.
okay, well, let me address that. Board members were not asking for a relief of a septic system requirement. What we're proposing here meets Department of Health requirements. So please realize that. This is not, a relief from a technical issue. And second of all,
relief for the zoning issue.
correct. So I'd rather state that you're talking about the pipes coming out of the house. Well, it's a 4-inch pipe. The pipe to the septic tank can be capped off, and the pipe coming out the back of the house can go to that. It's a moot point almost.
Well, yeah, but each of these C5 plans show the wells in different locations, and that doesn't matter to us from a zoning standpoint. I'm just saying for the consistency of the plans. You should pick one location for each of those wells and stick with it. Because if you drill it here in this case, and then you build out, if you put it in one position for the septic system, and then you get your right to connect to the sewer, now you got to move your well because it's close to that sewer line. We're not here to debate the technical issues of this requirement. We're looking at the zoning requirement. The zoning requires 43,560 square feet to build a septic system on a lot. In this case, you have like 19,000 and change and 22,000 and change. So they're clearly half the size they need to be to put up a new septic system. And these, if this was a lot that was existing and it had, a septic system that was failing, there might be, a way to work around that. But this is brand new land that we're developing here, and to go about it this way through then necessitating variances from the code, I'm just not comfortable with doing it.
Well, again, other board members were not here by our choice. This was imposed upon us by your town. They didn't satisfy their requirements to their residents.
And that's between you and the town, not the ZBA.
You could solve that right now by granting the variance. We're not asking one and relief for the other. We're putting both systems in. As soon as the town satisfies their requirements, the septic would be removed or cut off from the house and a sewer system connected to the manhole, which is already designed.
Okay, so I have no direct knowledge of what the shortcomings are of the town of Monroe, or why they have no capacity to tap new houses into the new district, or.
Well, actually, no, I included the letter from the Orange County DPW in my submission, so the board members have knowledge of it.
To your point of it not being a technical issue, and you're 100% right. But when you look at this as it's presented, and you're trying to look for the good, right? When I'm looking at this and I see that you don't even have half of the area that you need, right? Because that's the variance. That's what you're looking for. You're looking to go for an acre, and you have less than an acre. And, you know, by that, it's cut and dry. But when we look at, okay, where's the well? You're trying to make sure that it's the proper distance away from all that and the hookup. What I look for is just a little ray of sunshine, if you will, to sit there and say, maybe that's the right direction to go. So I'm not being nitpicky here. I don't think the chairman's been nitpicky about the technical aspects of what could be capped, but you try to look at it as a big picture of, because if we just had blinders on, it's, for me, it's an easy decision, right? So you take those blinders off and you're just looking for a little bit, a little bit more to help make an educated decision. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I appreciate that.
All right, so we do have a letter from the Commissioner of Department of Public Works in Benavia, spelling out that the town of Monroe is currently over its 133,000 gallon allocation, and that there are to be no more connections to the system. All right, so that's the issue is that we're over our capacity. what's the town doing about it, and how soon will that be resolved? And apparently, everybody's been aware of this issue for several years.
And it was 2
So
years.
the question becomes, well, how long before it's resolved? You know, how long of a period are we looking at to put in these temporary on-site sewage disposal systems?
I think that's one of the issues, right? Nobody really knows.
Yeah.
Right, because I understand that the town is working toward trying to rectify some of the infiltration to increase its capacity, but, you know, looking for grants and finding money to get it done, and with what effectiveness and when is, you know, the issue is, nobody knows. The efforts are there, but
The effort is there,
yeah,
that's the biggie, yeah.
yeah.
Have they done any studies on the system yet that we know of?
I'm not sure. I don't know specifically.
Well, capacity studies? All right, we're, you know, we won't have the wherewithal between us to answer those questions. All we know is what position the county sewer authority is taking, and they're saying no new connections for new development or anybody outside of the district, which they allow from time to time as a hardship. So they're not allowing any connections.
Just brainstorming legal issues. There are some legal issues that permeate both parts of this application. One of which is, and I apologize, I did not research it specifically coming up, but in thinking about it, I think there's case law out there that talks about the ability of the zoning board to issue a temporary variance. Either you can or you cannot. I'd like to do some legal research on that.
Yeah. Because
Essentially that's what they're asking. They're asking, well, we can make it permanent, but you said, we're not really asking permanent, we're asking, well, we'll put in the laterals and we want to hook up the sewer as soon as it's available, so in effect it's temporary. I just don't know
but that goes to
do that now.
That goes to a future owner of this developed lot. Now, if they've got a septic system that's operating perfectly, they're not going to be inclined to make that connection. You know, so how long is this temporary? That's the thing, is there's no way of really capping the length on the temporary variance.
That's what I was gonna say, temporary with an open-ended date. That no one
Right. You're right. You would have no way of knowing.
could be years from now.
Right. It's not like a variance for a temporary trailer during construction, you know, where you know there's a finite period and you can put a cap on it and say you've got this for, you know, the next 6 months.
Well, that's a great point of the future ownership of that
I didn't
lot,
think of
of
that.
that home, right? Because
Because
that's
that cost,
an expense for them.
Yeah.
Not only that,
It's not gonna be cheap.
Yeah, no. If you consider the welling and all that. No, not cheap at all.
that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to have the same well location on
Right.
both plans, because, you know, if your plan necessitates relocation of the well, that's another $15,000 to $20,000 expense.
Does the well have to be relocated once it connects to the sewer?
Well,
yeah,
it's
close to the
can't
sewer
be too close to the sewer line.
Especially a force main.
Right, it's gotta be a certain distance away from the septic and a certain distance away from the sewer line.
And a force main is even a greater distance, because a force main has the ability to crack and spew water out. You know, so it's, you know, if it's a gravity line, it's less likely to fail.
Right.
Whereas if it's a pressurized line, it's more likely to fail.
But where that well is, in regards to if it were a septic tank, would that well need to be moved once the sewer line gets hooked up? I wasn't.
Well, that's why I was asking, why the separate locations?
I think there were two different plans. One was planned with a septic tank, and one was a plan without a septic tank.
Right.
It wouldn't move necessarily if you start with the septic tank and then moved over to
But it does.
sewer.
And maybe that's the only thing he needs to do is make sure, you see, the well on this lot over here.
That's with no septic tank.
Right, this is the force main plan, and the well is, call it 15 feet from the house. And then if you look at the other one, the well is more like 80 feet or 100 feet from the house. You know, so you're relocating that, and that well needs to be back here if you go for your septic.
It's gonna be 100
So
feet
that,
away.
that dictates the well here. This one is doing the same thing, keeping it 100 feet away. And then if you look at the other C5,
Well, but if you started the well as if it was a septic tank, you wouldn't have to move the well.
right, that's what I'm saying.
You stay there, you just stay.
Right.
Are inconsistencies
Yeah.
between these two plans. You can't, it's not an easy flip from one to the other.
You know, board members, if the fault is there, that lies with me. My intent to show you the C3 and C5 from each design was completely consistent with what the planning board had. That's all. So I didn't try to propose anything to you that the planning board didn't have already. So that was our only intent.
Yeah, I have no question for
Will
Dean.
all that be in place as it's developed, ready to hook up?
I think that's what you were offering.
Right, was when everything, all the force, all that piping and everything would be laid in place at the ready to hook up?
Yes, the owner and builders, he's ready to put everything in per the plan for both systems. All the way, the septic in its entirety and the sewer, everything up to the manhole, except for the connection.
Including the pump.
Including, oh yes, yeah.
That was actually another thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Jake, you said a moment ago, there's a possibility that we can't even vote on this?
No, what I was getting at is, it runs in my mind, and I could be off, but I think that there's a possibility that there's law on, you know, if you grant a variance, could you make the variance temporary when there's a possibility that it's indefinite or, you know, or otherwise, right? You know,
Okay.
because it runs with the land. A variance would typically run with the land.
Yeah.
It's not unique to a person or a personal circumstance. So it's just a you know, esoteric issue that I feel like I've seen something on it, and I just like to research it in
I was gonna say, I would
advance.
say we should even vote them without knowing that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, not to hold up the applicant, but I would, this is one where there's a couple issues, that's one of them, that, you know, before you vote, I'd like to take a look at it and do research, which I can do in advance of the next meeting.
Or do we want to hold this public hearing open then? So that we can.
I would suggest that you do. Yeah, just in case I find something that you want to address with the applicant has the opportunity to address it on the record and put something in, or you can talk about it out loud one way or the other.
All right.
What about the public? Did they speak tonight? Or did they-
Certainly both. It would be, yeah, the public hearing's open now, so if
Yeah.
anybody's here that wants to speak on this, they certainly could. If you want to do that
Yeah,
now.
is there
we can do that
anybody-
next time.
In the public that has any questions or comments on this application? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're welcome to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, come forward.
Please come forward.
You can take your mask off when you speak. Thank you.
And for the record, can you give the secretary your full name and address?
Yes, Cynthia Francis. I live at 404 Lynch Road. So my concern is just what's going on. Can't say too much to what this new plan is. I just want to be aware.
Okay.
It's to the area.
So-
course.
The applicant is before the planning board with a 3-lot subdivision.
Yes.
It's got a small parcel that's up on Lakeview Drive, and then the larger portion of it, almost an acre of it, has frontage along Lakes Road. So they're coming in for a 3-lot subdivision, 1 lot along Lakeview Drive, 2 lots with a combined driveway coming out to the county road. That's, what we see here in this drawing. Right, the 2 driveways come together to form a single access point. The applicant has gone to Orange County Department of Public Works. He's had his access point approved by them, and he's got to do some grading and tree clearing along the front to create sight distance along that curve, so that the future homeowners can see clearly, to the right and left when pulling out of the driveway. The issue that's before this board is their intent was to connect to the central sewer system. Central sewer system looked at their plan and said, okay, your plan is reasonable and we'll allow it, but we can't allow it at this time because the town of Monroe is above its allocated flow, right? 133,000 gallons per day based on the letters we've seen here. So the county says they're okay with the plan, but they're not going to grant a permit on the plan or any kind of, strict approval on that because the town has no allocation left. It's not the applicant's fault. So now the applicant is saying, well, can I put a septic system on there? And our zoning code requires 1 full acre, 43,560 square feet, to allow a septic system to be built on the lot. Each of these lots, one has 19,000, the other has 22,000, both less than half an acre each. So he's looking to put a septic system on the lots temporarily until the connection to the sewer main is allowed some unknown time in the future, which we don't know what that is. And that's one of the things the board's not settled with is how long will this temporary easement or variance be in place and what triggers its the execution of the follow-up work to make the connection to the sewer system. And who will that be in the future? That'll be the future property owner. So other than that, the buildings fall within the building envelopes on the lot, the allowable building area. And the only question before this board is whether or not they can put temporary sanitary sewer system on each lot and move forward with the project with the promise to take it out in the future and connect to the sewer.
Interesting.
Okay, and you're along Lakes Road?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I'll leave you to,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, thank you
Thanks
for
for
coming.
coming and being interested.
Have a good night.
Appreciate it. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, so if there are no more questions from us, the public, and we know the questions we want to get answers to, I recommend that we carry the meeting over to March 25th. 22nd?
22nd.
Yeah.
March 22nd is the next meeting, yes.
Makes sense, because first time.
Everybody exactly a month. Oh, February 28 days.
Okay. So with that, do you have any questions of us before you leave?
No, just, well, if you can make us aware of any information prior to the meeting, so we can be prepared.
Sure.
That would be very helpful, so that, we know the trip. Okay. Thank you. All right.
No problem, we'll do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and that concludes the applicants with that.
Mm-mm.
No.
Number 4.
for Rutledge. Oh, bottom of the page here. Okay, is there anybody here tonight representing the Rutledge project? That's 206 Sunset Terrace.
Yep.
No, that's not 206, that's 228 Sunset Terrace.
Evening, guys.
Good evening.
I'll be able to hear you.
What's the matter?
Yeah, that's
All
cool.
the way down at the bottom.
The surveyor to verify the height of the building. Yeah, that was, they did that themselves, demonstrated, and now the building.
So if I may, Chairman,
Excuse me?
they were supposed to be here last month, so back in, what month would be February? So in November, when we had their public hearing open, they were informed that they needed to prove from the surveyor, had to document their survey with the height and everything else, that Ben would not issue a building permit without the surveyor, not by way of paperwork that you had received from Mr. Lasto's company.
Okay, so did we receive?
You received everything that you needed. I can't remember, in January, they were supposed to be at the meeting in January, they were a no-show. So they are here tonight for the decision, I believe. You received everything that you needed from them. There should be a site plan with all the information on it in your folder back in end of November, beginning of December probably.
Is this it, the new survey? Is that?
I believe, so Mr. Lasso, do you have one in front of you?
I do, yeah.
What is the date on that plan?
The revision should be December 11th, 2021.
Yeah, that's the.
So it's one that supersedes this.
Here.
This is June 16th.
Yeah.
So that's one.
This is the old one.
You might not have a seal, I have the seal in the office.
You have the seal.
I have a seal
Okay.
in the office.
It's not, it's the old one.
I don't have those stickers, but it's down.
Didn't have the balls.
This is a
Got the full clear. Plus he added the height of the shed, which wasn't on the last version. Right. Because this is the third version.
With the shed or without the shed?
Remember, you said,
Right.
we'll be making a decision.
Yes.
Without shed, with shed.
Open meeting.
And the height of it.
If just, I'm not, being a spot here right now.
You are.
I'm not trying to,
You want me to remember back to November?
because it's on the agenda as returning.
What number yesterday?
I thought I have this, but I don't have an actual application file. Maybe it's from like 2021.
The public hearing was held open in November until the next meeting, which was supposed to be January 25th. They did not come in as representation, so they are here this evening. So the public hearing would have to be closed if you wish, if you grant that and the decision granted, or if you're looking for more information.
I just wanna.
But I think you were close to a decision at the last meeting.
Yeah, I think we were there, and then you let us know that the.
Right, that Ben wouldn't give permits without the final, so you could not approve without getting the information from the survey. And that's where we left off, so.
And the variance, it's been so long, but the variance is the height variance? Or it's the side, it's the yard on the Lake Region Boulevard side?
Yes,
Both?
the height was met.
Right, it was fine.
Height's good.
The height was met,
Okay.
it's just the
So
one
it's just
that-
the 18 Just the 18.8 feet, that's it?
The one side variance with the balance left.
And what's required is what, 25?
Honestly, I don't remember those numbers.
Required is 40, I believe.
40?
Yeah, because it's on a,
It's a corner lot.
it's a lot, so it's
Right.
very front there.
Yes, that's.
Okay.
that's something.
Then the other variance would be the lot coverage.
Oh,
Also, yeah,
right.
Who's that one up?
Put lot coverage is
So
that.
required is 40, is 18.
Or is that what we?
So what-
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry,
don't.
after the surveyor did all the measurements, we came at 27.8 with the new shed. Before we were at 24.8, and I believe that value needs to be 25%.
It's
Like the basketball court in there, porches, decks, lounges. Okay. So we're currently in the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay. We left kind of room, so I guess there's nobody in the public can make comment. You provided us with the third version of the map. That's dated December 11th, 2021. It's the surfaces. So we have the additional information breaking down the built upon portion of the lot. And that includes the shed and the basketball court, all of the existing buildings, the driveways and walkways. And with all that accounted for, you are at 27.8% lot coverage. And maximum lot coverage, I believe, is 25 in this zone. And then we also have the front yard setback to the shed. And 40 feet is required there, we only have 18.8. But that's an existing structure at this time.
Yeah.
All right, and then the other issue that the building inspector had was the height of the shed. And by taking the average height on all four sides, he came out with a 12.9 foot average height versus 15 foot allowed. So we're good there. So then if we were to consider variances, it would be for the front yard setback for the shed and the lot coverage.
Yes.
Is your deck covered?
No.
You see a lot coverage, it includes porch and deck.
The porch is the front. You
Yeah.
see POR.
That's covered.
That's covered, yes.
But in the impervious surfaces, it says porch and deck. So do you know if your deck was included in that percentage of lot coverage in the calculation?
Yes, it's in the table. If you look at the impervious surfaces.
Yeah, no, but it's an uncovered deck, so.
There's porch and
And
deck.
deck. I don't think the porch is 764 square feet.
Well, that's the combination of the two. Because I guess the porch is the portion out front.
Correct. So, yeah, I think they did include that in here.
The deck, basketball courts covered, walkways, the cabin parking, total without shed.
Yeah, I always forget, does the Monroe code count an open deck against lot coverage or does not?
Yes, yeah, anything built upon, any constructed surface is
Well, that's not towards side setback.
part of coverage.
Yeah, it's a setback, it
It's
doesn't
a
count.
setback. It doesn't
The
count.
coverage it does.
Coverage it does.
Because we had that issue on that other Eagle View application for packet surfaces. They have
right.
It's pretty broad.
Okay.
So I think that's properly included in, it looks like he did it.
Okay.
Yeah, and the setback does not need any help on the setback.
Okay. So with all that discussion, does anybody have any further questions about the action we're being asked to take tonight?
No.
Any major concerns? Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'd like to hear a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the public hearing is closed on this time. We have all the information that we've asked the applicant to get, and it's been a long, slow road, but we're finally there. We've got it all codified on a signed survey map that was updated most recently December 11th, 2021. So with that, let's go through the 5 factors that we need to consider in granting the variance. And the 2 variances that are being considered is the front yard setback from the shed. It's only 18.8 feet where 40 feet is required. And the maximum lot coverage is 27.8% versus 25% allowable.
Yeah, so you have the balancing test, first factor, considering the balancing test is whether there's a negative impact on nearby properties or character of the community caused by the grant of the variance.
My opinion is no.
No, I
Next is whether there are any feasible alternatives to achieve the benefits sought.
It's already constructed.
At this point, no.
Right, constructed, but it can be moved.
Whether the variance sought are substantial.
Substantial.
Well,
The front setback is a little substantial to moderate.
Yeah.
The 2.8% is not substantial.
Agreed.
And then 4 is any negative impact on environmental conditions.
My opinion, no.
No, I mean, there's a slight increase in impervious area, but that's minor.
And then last is whether it's self-created.
Yes. Yes, self-created, for sure. So with all that being said, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the 2 variances required for this parcel?
I make a motion to approve the 2 variances required for this parcel.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 A motion to authorize me to do a resolution and for the chairman to sign.
What the lawyer said.
I second it.
Okay, John did that, who seconded that one?
I did.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that wraps us up. We will be writing out a resolution granting these variances, and at that time you can go back to the building inspector and close out your case. It'll take a couple of weeks to get the variance written up and signed. Okay.
What's the name? Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good luck, guys.
I'll talk to him in a week or so, he'll call me. Trust me, he'll call me.
Okay. What about the Westerners? Westerners.
Westerners? Yeah, they didn't submit anything new.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I have here, we asked for a survey, right? So they didn't, so
They might be in the process.
yeah. Got it.
So the only thing left is 3 months worth of minutes, or you can hold them over. Kevin's face is saying hold them over. Is that the decision?
Yes.
I say we go through the minutes quickly. Knock that out, and it's already late, and these minutes get back to one.
We've been doing it now. We've been pushing them off.
Okay, so we have 3 sets of minutes here tonight, one for September 2021, October 2021, and November 2021. So September's getting a little aged here, so
But they're up on the website in the draft form. They're out there. But if you've read them and you have no changes, you can just make the motion.
So present that night was myself, Kevin Scully, Marcy Daniel, Chip Postiglione, and Stephen Bass. So John will have to abstain on passing the motions on the minutes. And I asked, have the board members read the September 2021 minutes? And do you find them to be acceptable?
I've read them.
Right.
And I find them to be acceptable.
As have I.
As have I.
Anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes for September 2021?
I make a motion to approve the minutes for the September 2021 meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 John,
Abstain.
thank you.
You actually have to say. I went through a few months of abstaining.
Okay, moving on to the October 2021 minutes. Present at that meeting was myself, Kevin Scully, Marcy Daniel, Chip Postiglione, and Stephen Pat. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes?
I reviewed them.
I have.
And does anybody have any edits to offer, or do we find them acceptable?
Where do I begin? So.
That's it. Okay, so would anybody like to make a motion to approve the October 2021 meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the October 26, 2021 minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the last set of minutes is for November 2021, and present at that meeting were myself, Kevin, Marcy, Chip, and Steve. So we had the full board each time. And once again, has everybody had a chance to read and review these minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
And do you find these minutes accurately reflect the meeting of that night?
Yes.
Yes. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes for November 2021?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from November 23rd, 2021.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's okay. That brings us up to date for, we're now in 2022.
Yeah,
With December, there was no meeting.
No meeting.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so that being done, that was the last matter on the agenda here. The one thing I would like to bring up though, you know, kind of as an administrative matter. Recently we had appointed Chip as the deputy chair. He's gotten a promotion at work which requires him to be in Washington, D.C., which he flew home from there this afternoon to be at this meeting tonight. So I have issues coming up where I may not make meetings, so it's gonna fall to Chip. If Chip happens not to be here, I would like there to be consideration of a third alternate to chair the meetings. So that offer is out there, and you know, you can think about it. I'll also let Marcy know, and we'll go from there. Kevin has the greatest tenure on the board, then Marcy, then Steve, and then John. Not that that's the be all and say all of who becomes the acting chair, but that's just, one of the things we'll take into consideration. So that's, we need no action on that at this point, just wanted to put that out there. And the final thing is, would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Let me second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.